Shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this Civ overview, we're going to be doing an Inquisition into the Spanish. Now, they're a gunpowder and monk civilization, and I'd actually consider them one of the easier civs to learn, with only a handful of pretty passive bonuses. While they start with a bit of a generic early game, that leads into having a very strong castle and imperial age, with one of the most open tech trees you can find. In terms of performance, they're pretty middle of the road on Arabia, leading sometimes to the perception they're a mediocre 1v1 civ in general, which I think undersells them quite a bit. They're significantly above average on Arena, Hideout, Four Lakes, and Mega Random, while also being hands down the best civilization on Nomad by a pretty wide margin. If you're someone who prefers playing a lot of offbeat maps or team games, then Spanish can be a surprisingly underrated and versatile choice, with one of the best unique units in the game. Nope, not that one. Yeah, that one. Let's check them out. We'll start off with their team bonus, which is that their whole team's trade units generate 25% more gold than usual. This is always in the conversation as one of the best team bonuses in the game for pretty obvious reasons. With a Spanish teammate, you can get away with either fewer trade carts or just pocket the extra gold. It is pretty late game focused though, as you generally don't trade until you're an Imperial, but this is basically unlimited potential to rack up gold the longer the game goes on. Also, in case you're wondering, it does apply to trade cogs as well, so you're even covered on water maps. Moving on to their civ bonuses, the first is their builders work 30% faster, with the exception of wonders, which are built 20% faster to match treadmill crane. This is one of those bonuses you don't necessarily think about while playing, but it helps in a lot of small ways that can really add up. To start, their houses, mills, camps, farms, military buildings, etc. are all built faster, saving anywhere from 5 to 12 seconds on most buildings. This lets your villagers get back to work sooner, and for example, in a typical fast castle, adds up to about 2 minutes of safe construction time, translating to about 40 extra resources. They also have a neat trick where they can build 3 houses at the start of the game and not get housed, whereas other civilizations need 2 villagers to focus on 1 house. Besides these little efficiencies, faster working builders also means you're quicker to wall up your base and makes castle drops much harder to prevent. This bonus alone even gives Spanish a decent tower rush if used aggressively, with a greater ability to also defend against a tower rush by having your own defensive towers go up faster. Maybe the largest benefit from this bonus though comes on Nomad, where it allows you to get your first town center up fast enough to end up 1 villager ahead of other civilizations from the start. Overall, it's just an extremely versatile and easy to overlook bonus, though in case you're wondering, it doesn't apply to repairing, which is done at the same speed for Spanish as any other civilization. Their second civ bonus is their blacksmith upgrades don't cost any gold. This is almost useless in the feudal age, as fletching is the only tech affected, but by the end of castle age, you could have saved up to 670 gold already. You probably won't make use of all of that in the mid game, but to fully upgrade knights, for example, saves almost 300 resources right there. Adding in the Imperial Age though, you can save nearly a combined 1700 gold, which would then cover the Cavalier, Paladin, and Halberdier upgrades gold cost for some perspective. I find this is especially nice when transitioning to 1 or more trash units, where you might be grabbing the armor upgrades for a unit type from scratch. Their third bonus is their gunpowder units fire 18% faster. This applies to hand cannoneers, bombard cannons, cannon galleons, and indirectly to the Conquistador, which has its attack rate set to the same as the Spanish hand cannoneer. It's hard to go wrong with a faster firing rate, especially for ranged units, though again, this is very late game focused. For arena or team games especially, this makes your gunpowder units just that much more dangerous and better in a supporting role. And finally, their last bonus is their cannon galleons have better accuracy, essentially by giving them free ballistics, and have faster moving cannonballs that are harder to dodge. The cannonball's speed difference is pretty noticeable, with Spanish cannonballs moving at 7 tiles per second compared to the generic 3 tiles per second. Dodging cannon galleon shots probably happens more in campaigns than competitive games, but on top of a faster reload time, this makes Spanish cannon galleons a little extra dangerous against enemy ships and units that come too close to the shore. So that's the Spanish bonuses. Overall, they're pretty straightforward, with faster working builders and blacksmith gold discounts being your main eco bonuses, followed by good gunpowder units and trade in the late game. Reinforcing their gunpowder and monk identity, they actually have two unique units, which we'll take a look at now. We'll start with the Conquistador. The game generally treats them as a cavalry archer, and I think that makes sense as a decent starting point, though as we'll see, they have some key differences. Side by side, the Conquistador is the more expensive unit, costing nearly the exact same as a knight, though of course you also need to pay for a castle first. Stats-wise, they have quite similar HP to the cavalry archer, which can be increased by another 20 with bloodlines, but start with 2 of each type of armor, compared to the cavalry archer's 0, making Conquistadors automatically a much tankier unit. They also have double the attack per shot that a cavalry archer does after bodkin arrow, though once you throw in thumb ring for 100% accuracy and faster reloading, the cavalry archer ends up with a similar damage per second to the Conquistador on paper. All of this so far leaves the Conquistador with a couple of big advantages. First, you save on cost by not needing to pay for the archer attack upgrades and thumb ring, as neither affect it, and neither does ballistics, Parthian tactics, or chemistry for that matter, saving a lot of resources and research time. Instead, it's just bloodlines, husbandry, and archer armor that you need to focus on, meaning Conquistadors become an instant power unit in Castle Age and don't really need upgrades besides bloodlines to be effective. Their second big advantage is their high attack means they're much better against high pierce armor targets. Skirmishers, for example, have bonus damage against them like any cavalry archer, but a Conquistador's high attack and extra armor means it wins one-on-one, which is not true for cavalry archers or even Mangudai. Likewise, Conquistadors hold it better against Eagle Warriors and do a surprisingly good job against Knights. They can beat an equal number of Knights pretty easily with Micro, and can even beat crossbows with balanced resources. Given the popularity of those two units, just those facts on its own make it a top tier unit in Castle Age. Another big advantage for the unit is that a group of 3 can one-shot a villager, making it incredibly effective at raiding even in very small numbers. That said, everyone kinda knows that Conquistadors are coming when they see you pick Spanish, so it's pretty rare that you'll have the element of surprise. To touch on a couple of their hidden attributes, they are a little slower than the typical cavalry archer and cavalry unit. They take bonus damage from anything anti-cavalry or anti-archer, as you might expect, and they also have just 65% accuracy at long range, so if you really want to hit something, it helps to be quite close to it. They also have a sneaky +2 attack against buildings and a bonus against rams to offset their slow fire rate. Now, while no one would dispute they're a great unit in Castle Age for all the reasons outlined, they don't have the same overpowered reputation in Imperial Age. Their elite upgrade gives a similar advantage to other Imperial Age cavalry archer upgrades with a little more attack, accuracy, and HP for a pretty reasonable cost. Remember though, they're unaffected by bracer, chemistry, ballistics, and thumb ring, which means they don't entirely keep up with the improvements made to similar mounted archer units. So in a relative sense, they're a bit less impressive in Imperial Age, though still frequently used in both 1v1s and team games. Moving on to their second unique unit, we have the Missionary. This is our first indication that Spanish are in fact a monk civilization, and ironically, it's by giving you a unit that is not the monk. Side by side, you can see they have the same HP, and actually the same conversion and healing ability, being indistinguishable in that regard. Their advantages are they move 60% faster, closer to 75% faster after husbandry, and also that they're affected by bloodlines, giving them 20 more HP. This is on top of being affected by all of the techs at the monastery as well. So far, it sounds pretty good, but there's also some pretty major disadvantages. They can't carry relics, meaning you'll probably have to make monks anyway. They have 2 less range, making conversions more dangerous, have 2 less line of sight, and also take anti-cavalry bonus damage from things like pikes and camels. Whether you decide to incorporate some missionaries or stick with monks, I see as a personal preference, depending on how much you value speed against the shorter conversion range. At least it's an option that you have, and given the mobility that Spanish tend to have otherwise with Conquistadors and Knights, the Missionary certainly fits that more mobile playstyle. Helping to push you even more in that monastery direction, let's talk about the unique techs. The first is Inquisition, which is pretty cheap and gives your monks and missionaries a faster conversion time on average. In general, it only seems to be about a second faster, but on the scale of 20 monks, there's a noticeable difference in the fastest conversions, the average conversion time, and it even moves the cap of the maximum conversion time a bit lower. Keep in mind, it has the same gold cost as 3 monks or missionaries though, so I wouldn't pick it up on a whim, but if you are using a lot of monks against enemy knights or elephants, there could definitely be a situation where this makes sense to pick up. Moving on, their second unique tech is the legendary Supremacy. This basically turns your regular old villagers into long swordsmen, minus the part where they'll aggressively seek out enemy targets. Combining this with the tech sappers gives the old school version of Flemish Revolution, where you can trade in your economy for a last-ditch all-in attack. That said, this tech doesn't have to be used for ridiculous strategies and trying to get achievements, and in fact it's straight up just a great defensive choice if you're being heavily raided, and even combines well with your faster builders to make castle drops basically impossible to stop. For one reason or another, I tend to pick this up basically every time I play Spanish, as it's cheap, great for the memes, and 9 times out of 10 is actually a solid strategic choice to stifle enemy raids. So that's the Spanish unique units and techs, again largely reaffirming their gunpowder and monastery identity. In many games, players dial into the Conquistador and make that their primary unit, though Spanish actually have one of the most broad tech trees to support it. In fact, now let's move on and take a look at their tech tree, starting with the archers. Right away, it's a little dicey as you're missing crossbow, and in fact they're one of only 2 civilizations that tap out at archers. Thumb ring here is mostly just to taunt your archers, and the cavalry archer is essentially just an inferior option to the Conquistador for reasons we saw earlier. Of course, they have fully upgraded elite skirmishers and faster attacking hand cannoneers to give you some decent late game options. Overall, I'd say it's a B for the archery range. Next up, for their infantry, everything is fully upgraded, though with the only relevant bonus being a discounted gold cost on Blacksmith upgrades. Fully upgraded halberdier and champion certainly give you some nice counter units, and I'd say it's a B+ for infantry. Especially in the late game, the gold savings really make a barracks transition feel a lot smoother than usual in my opinion. Moving on to cavalry, outside of conquistadors, this is primarily how Spanish are played. You have fully upgradable Hussar and Paladin, again with the gold savings of the Blacksmith keeping you usually ahead on your attack and armor upgrades. A Scout Rush isn't really helped out by your bonuses all that much, but there's no reason you can't play them as a Scout and Knight civilization all the way through. I'd say it's an A- for cavalry, only held back by lacking a direct Knight bonus or the option of camels. Next up, for Siege, they're missing Siege Onager and Heavy Scorpion, which isn't the end of the world, with your Bombard Cannons making up for that by having faster attack. The big blemish here is lacking Siege Engineers, without which the Siege Ram, Onager, and Bombard Cannon just aren't as good as they could be. It's still enough to give them a B for their siege, but it's not really their specialty. Moving on to the Navy, right away it looks really good with a completely open tech tree, though given how snowbally water games can be, it's always nice to have at least one solid naval or eco bonus. Faster builders and discounted fletching and bodkin arrow are the only relevant bonuses here, so Spanish get out to a bit of a slow start with just a C+ on water early. In the late game though, I think they shine a bit more, with the Cannon Galleon in particular getting a couple of bonuses. Despite being the 7th most popular pick, Spanish actually aren't really top tier on water maps, and in fact the stats put them at just about a 50% win rate on islands. I'd still say they get an A- in the late game for a B on water overall. Certainly if you can land with a few conquistadors or castle drop someone's island, then Spanish have some potential. Next up, at the monastery, you have every tech available, your missionary unique unit for more speed, plus Inquisition, giving you slightly faster conversion times. Obviously, the monastery is meant to be one of their specialties, and there's lots of options here, so I'd give them an A-, as I think they're in the conversation, but not quite at the top tier. Moving on to defenses, this is arguably where they excel even more. Faster builders makes any sort of castle or tower strategy significantly stronger, and you have all the different types of towers available. In case you're wondering, the Bombard Tower is not improved by your gunpowder firing rate bonus, but is still a great option. What makes them an A+ defensive civ automatically though is Supremacy. Admittedly, Spanish are a little vulnerable to aggressive civs on open maps, but once you get Supremacy, Spanish are possibly the most annoying civ in the game to raid, as it seems like their villagers just never die, so I'm gonna give it an easy A+. And finally, to wrap up with their trash units, that is, units that don't cost gold, they have every option fully upgradable, on top of the Blacksmith gold discounts, making any of those transitions easier. I'd also throw in the Supremacy Villagers here again, as there isn't really a trash unit that can handle them easily, and it only takes a handful to fight off a Hussar for example. Personally, I love Trash Wars as Spanish, and I'd give them an A-. So to finish up with some final thoughts, probably the safest way to play Spanish would be as a traditional cavalry civilization, opening scouts into knights, with a transition to conquistadors in the back of your mind whenever possible. The only issue with this is it's all pretty predictable, leading to players experimenting with Spanish archer and tower openings just to do something different. The Conquistador is really what makes them more interesting than just another cavalry civ though, and it should always be in the back of your mind as a safe fallback unit. Even if people know it's coming, it's just that good. As I said off the top, Spanish sometimes get a bad rap for being a bit pedestrian on 1v1 Arabia, but they're a great pocket in team games, great on closed maps, or really anytime you can get away with a fast castle and bypass the weak feudal age, they're going to be in a good position. A core part of the Spanish identity, on top of their many tech tree options, is really their smooth transitions between creating military buildings faster, discounts on blacksmith techs, and the Conquistador being ready basically straight out of the box without a lot of upgrades. In fact, the Conquistador reminds me a lot of this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Where websites traditionally take a lot of technical knowledge to set up and maintain, Squarespace is a tool to help you create a professional-looking website within minutes. If you're a blogger, entrepreneur, or someone looking to build an online presence but have no idea how to make a website from scratch, Squarespace has you covered with great tools to help you out and simplify the website building process. Using one of their templates, I was able to easily and quickly create a website for my baby crib and sleep-related accessory store, Spirit of the Lull. Squarespace also has great third-party extensions to even handle things like bookkeeping, taxes, shipping, and scheduling to accommodate your specific needs. You just pick a template and domain name, and you're good to go. The best part is if you use my code, you get 2 free weeks to try it out, and if you like it, you get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So hopefully this video gave you a few new ideas to try with the very powerful and flexible Spanish. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.